Okay, so these are the pieces I'm mostly working with. I've got some of my extras, and I have lined up my back so that they're sitting on top of each other. I don't remember changing the shape of the side seam like that. But it looks like the mistake is in the piece underneath. So I want to copy the original shoulder shape right here onto my piece. So I've carefully lined it up so that it matches the way that it was sitting when it was first done. And I'm just going to copy this part of the line because when I'm making my lining I don't want to include the shoulder pad. So create line copy, control, and I want this line. I also want the dart and the shoulder, and I want to put that on that piece and then say cancel, and it's there. So now when I move that, I've got the reference line for my original shoulder. And it isn't lining up quite exactly because of the ease that I've got and the redistribution of the three parts of the dart. And then on the front, I'm going to do the same thing. Create line copy, this shoulder, put it on that piece, say OK, and I obviously didn't get it. Create line copy, this is the line, choose the piece that I want to have it. It just really isn't, I guess I need to hold down the control key anyway. Okay. Okay. And there's the line and cancel. And I can move that piece out of the way. So now I am just looking at my adjusted back, my back neck facing that came from the original. I've got my new front facing, and I've still got my map to work with and those two to refer to if I need to, because we still need to make our collar. But this one is about linings, so I'm going to zoom in really tight and make sure that these two are on top of each other. If I got rid of that grade rule on the one underneath, it would be easier to make sure they were the same, but I'm pretty confident about that. Okay. So I've widened the shoulder area. I need to use my same piece, but I don't need the extra ease in the shoulder. And because of the way I'm going to make my lining, I'm going to put my dart in the curve. So I need to measure the space of that dart and verify line length, this 0.435. And I'm going to go to my original back shape and my original shoulder shape. And when I make my back lining, I also want to have an extra inch added to it, tapered to nothing. So that's going to look something like this, where I just add this space and I come out here an extra inch, but I'm going to be more careful than that. And then this line is going to come clear out here, and we'll put a pleat down the center back that attaches to the facing. And I actually could be that relaxed about it. How big is that line? Verify. It's slightly less than an inch, so I would want to make it an actual inch. But that's where we're going. Okay. So I'm tracing off all of this. I'm using my original shoulder line, but I want to move my dart over. So I'm going to copy this line. And it says to select the piece to receive the line, and I've made a mess of it. Create line copy again. Select the piece that's getting it. Well, wow. I guess I could just put it on itself, because I really just want to line it up exactly right there. But it disappeared. So I'm going to set it right there, because that's where I'm going to end up putting that space. Because I'm going to combine it with my back neck facing, and this is the length of the dart about right here, so I'm going to blend in about right here, and then I missed. Blending and joining that little white line right there, because I want to make that curve the width of the dart, so that I end up getting rid of that dart horizontally as it connects to the facing, instead of actually sewing a dart in it. Let me make sure that I actually got the right end. Yeah, that's very close. I might need to blend it a little bit. It might end up having a little bit of ease in there, but we're adding that inch out this direction, so that's going to be okay. And I'm going to create a 2-point line right here, and I'm going to make it horizontal. And then I'm going to offset that line so that I know I get my inch. Create line offset. There are other ways to do this. I know I do some strange things, but I also do some good things. Okay, so I've got that line, and I want to use that part of it, and I want to extend this line. I'm going to make a 2-point line that joins this one, that moves vertically just right there. So that gives me the information I need to trace off this piece. And that's going to disappear. And I want to extend, do I want to extend that line out? Sometimes you want to extend them out, but sometimes if you continue on that trajectory, they get too big. So I'm going to extend this down and make a new line. So 2-point vertical, end it right here, and then I'm going to create a straight line that goes from here to here, because I'm connecting with the end of that and I'm coming straight out here, and that's the line I'm going to end up using because this is going to sew to that, and it will be minus the dart, and that dart's going to be controlled anyway, and it's going to be on the inside, so the dart is there. It's just more of a princess line than the other line. And if you don't end up doing this identical to the way I do, I just want you to remember the concept. And on your jackets, maybe you're going to use a princess line instead, but we've studied that. I'm just going over how to make a lining and where to put things. So from here, now I need another new line. And if I haven't explained it well enough, you'll see it at the end. So maybe you just want to watch until I get to the end. Okay, so we have our back neck facing, that's a control piece. Our back neck facing is going to sew to our lining piece. Our lining piece needs to have a notch right here, so I'm going to put a notch on the end of that line right here. And then I'm going to trace off my back lining. Create piece trace, control this line, this curved line, till it joins this line, and then this line. Okay, and then I want my, do I want my darts? I don't know that I do, but I'm going to copy them. And you know, really, I'm going to want them on the straight of grain, so maybe copying them isn't the right approach. Okay, so that combined with the facing is my back lining, and I'm going to call that my jacket lining adjusted. Okay, so this was just my helper lines. I don't need those attached to my facing anymore, but I'll leave them there for a minute. So this is my actual back body that's going to be the wool that matches, and it's got the dart in the right place. If I'm going to add a dart to it, I could make it boxier by leaving the dart out. If I did that, I'd want to leave the dart out of my lining. So you've got a lot of design choices to make in addition to the choices I just made. But what you're going to do first with this is this one is going to be cut on the fold. So we'll want to rotate this group of lines so that it's parallel to that, so that if we were to sew a dart in, it wouldn't be crooked. And then when the lining pieces are sewn to each other in the shoulder, and the body pieces are sewn to each other, and the facing pieces are sewn to each other, then the last thing we have to do, so you'll have this piece sewn to this piece in the shoulder, and you'll have the front lining that we haven't done yet sewn in the shoulder. So the lining pieces will end up being sewn to the facing pieces by stitching them up around the neck and back down, all in one shot. And if you make it that way, if you want to make a zip out lining, that makes it a lot easier to convert it to that. And there's a sample in the classroom, or you can just imagine a zip out lining. But this is going to be on the fold, and then you'll put a tuck right here, and when that sews together minus the tuck, how close is that going to be to what we need it to be? Verify walk pieces. The stationary piece is this one, and I want to switch direction, and I wasn't holding the control key, so of course, walk pieces. Select lines on the stationary piece. This one, change direction. Release the control key. Select the line on the walk piece. Hold the control key and choose the line, and I don't need to get the last one because it's not going into that line. And so that means I either need to ease in how much in that space, which I probably should because it would make it fit better. So I'm going to leave that alone, but I'm going to measure it because I'm curious. Create line. That's 1/4 of an inch, which is what it looks like. And I believe that we can ease that 1/4 of an inch there. The problem is when you get a sewer that thinks they know what they're doing and the pattern maker has built ease into there on purpose. So we'll ease the lining into the neck facing, and then we'll have this extra tuck back here that will just fold over into a pleat that goes down the center back, and you'll see that in the sample, and most coats have that. So that means I'm not going to change the start, but well, okay, I'll change it. First, let's create a rectangle. And I'm feeling bad because I don't think I've made it clear enough before I started what we're doing, and here we are doing it. Modify, set, rotate. So even though that's going to be a little weird on the piece, it's necessary because it's going to be cut on the fold. So now we need to realign the grain so that it's parallel to the center back. So now that's where it needs to be. And we can either leave the dart where it is at the bottom or leave the dart where it is at the top. I'm going to leave it where it is at the bottom because it's the back. So I'm going to modify line rotate, and I'm going to select, I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to choose all of those lines so they function as a unit, and then release. And then it says to select a point on the line to rotate around and a point to guide the movement. So I'm going to move them all so they're parallel, and I've got them lined up on the dots. So if I wanted to, I could arrange it so that it's right on the dots. Or better still, I could create a 2-point line and start down here and horizontal. So I'm not quite perfect with that, but if I had done that before I started, then I could have rotated this precisely to that line, and then I would have had it right on grain and made it easy to sew as a dart. So I'm going to save that piece. And I've got this one the way I want it now, so I don't need those helper lines on it. And I think that I haven't changed it actually, so I don't need to do anything with it. It's just already there. So we have our front and our back lining and our back and our back neck facing. So I'm not going to save that. It would be safer if I deleted it. And I want to get rid of all those numbers, so verify clear. So my back neck facing and my back lining, they're crooked because they're not on the same grain anymore. And where did I put my front neck facing? Well, I've got another one, so I'll bring that one down. Oh, there it is. Wow, here's where I want to put all of my pieces. I could separate them all. Don't really want to do that. I'm going to zoom in to right here. Oh, I'm going to touch those two corners. And if I had done it in the right order, that would have been great. So we'll try that again. I want on the screen, I'm going to choose the zoom tool and outline the ones I want to see. And those are the ones I want to see. So I've got my back body, my back lining, and my back facing, and I've got my front body, and I need a front lining, and I'm going to compare my front lining to my back facing. Modify piece flip around that line, and if I line those up, they should come together. They were never on the same shoulder. The front and back shoulder weren't aligned perfectly. So, and when I cleared the measurements, this wasn't on the screen, so I imagine that has something to do with it. Verify clear. Okay. Modify, set, rotate. I'm lining up my back neck facing on my front neck facing to make sure it matches. And there it is. So they line up correctly, and if I flip around that line, modify piece flip, flip about line and I choose that one, they have a nice smooth line that when the shoulder seams are sewn together on both sides, then we're going to create the front lining to sew up to that neatly, and the back lining will sew over there, and then we can make our collar. And I think I'm going to do the sleeve linings at the same time that I do the sleeve. Okay. Well, I made it difficult on myself, didn't I? Because if I had made my lining when all of these pieces were lined up exactly where they go, I wouldn't have to put them back where they belong. Okay, so I'm going to line that up until one disappears, whoops, inside the other. Okay, so they are supposed to align right there, and they appear to be aligning right here. So I'm going to copy this line onto my front, create line copy, select this line, control, all three of those lines. I need to combine them into one. Okay. I did that again. I keep saying okay. Create line copy, control key, choose the lines, release, select the piece to receive the lines, cancel, and cancel again. Okay, so I can now trace off my lining piece over here. And I need to keep this dart. This one I don't necessarily have to keep. But I'm going to take, if I do the same thing I did on the other one, instead of following the trajectory, I move this straight out and draw a different line. I don't know which one would be the right answer. It depends on what I did and how I did it. So I think based on what I did over here, I want to come over here straight. So 2-point line, right click, vertical, zoom in, connect with that line. And then I won't get this big huge amount right here. So I'm going to draw a new line from here to here, which is where I want it to be. And then I'm going to delete the other line. And I think that's more correct. But that's something you have to figure out based on what you're doing. We're getting into a lot more complicated, and I'm not just simplifying it for you. Let me know if you want me to just simplify it for you, and I won't add things like roll ease or anything. I'll just do the simple one that won't fit as well. Okay, so I'll start simple and then I'll get more difficult with this one. Create piece trace, hold the control key. I want this line. Uh-oh. Well, my facing is going underneath and my body is on top. So it makes sense that I want this little corner of my facing cut off when I trace this off, because it's underneath the shoulder pad. So I'm going to keep going. But that means we'll have to come back and double check the shoulder because that's changing it a little bit. When I made the shoulder facing, all right, I'll finish the thought and then release and hold down the control key, and I want all of these lines on my lining. And release. Okay, so there's my simple version of my lining, and it sews to my facing. And this is my adjusted front lining. Okay. Cancel. So what we've got right now, when I made this back neck facing, I went back to the original to make it, and I didn't do that when I made this piece. So it makes sense to me that this piece probably did need that little adjustment. So right here, the neckline is the same, but if this is going to sit underneath that shoulder pad, this does not need that extra shoulder pad ease. So I'm going to line that up exactly on top. And then I'm going to copy this line onto this piece because I'm probably going to chop that off. But that means I'm going to lose my right angle, and I'll have to make some adjustments to the facing with the back neck facing. Create line copy. I'm copying this line. I'm putting it on this piece, and I'll cancel so it stays where it is. And we'll take it from there. So this little bit probably needs to be cut off for the same reason that I started from my original back shoulder when I made my back neck facing. So how well do these line up if I line it up on that line? Modify, set, rotate on to this line with this line. Cancel. Well, I lucked out. That looks fine. So I can just swap that. So if you've always wondered how you know how to make the lining smaller than the body, you don't add shoulder patties to the lining. Okay. And where's our back lining? So I'm going to flip that over and join it. Modify, set, rotate. So this is joining here, and this is joining here. Cancel. Oh. So we have a little discrepancy here. So it makes us wonder what I did. Because we deliberately left that there, and if I backtrack, maybe I should have it here, but I don't want to add that extra ease back that I took out where I put the dart in there, but the shoulder was a little too wide. No, it was this length that was a little too wide, so that's concerning. I need to backtrack and figure out what I did, but you don't have to listen to that. So this is going to sew right there, and this is going to sew right there. And you'll just stitch all the way up right here and combine them together. And I'll be more careful about that. So it's lining up on that inside line. And then this piece, yeah, I'm not really liking that. But so I need to swap those two. Modify line swap. So those come together nicely now. And those come together nicely with it. So we just need to set rotate this one. Well, what did I do? Verify, walk. From here and here. Well, I didn't hold down the control key, and so I couldn't flip it. Modify walk. Stationary. Release. Control again. Walk piece. Change direction. Come on. I must have touched it. What do you suppose disable walk piece highlight means? That hasn't ever been there before. All right. We'll try that one more time. But really what I want to do is walk it along that way, not flipped. But if I do that, then I'm going to end up with this right here, and I'm going to just rotate the piece, because if I ease that in like I want to, it will fit better. So modify piece, rotate, select piece to rotate, the point on the piece to rotate around, choose a reference point. So if I line that up on my back, well, that's not pretty. Those don't come together nice and straight like I want them. So if I was working with that on the table, I would draw a straight line right there and put it back, which is essentially going to add to my back piece what I cut off the front. This is what happens when I'm thinking and talking at the same time. Okay, we're going to go back to trying to walk it just for fun. maybe I don't want to put the dart into that space. Sometimes I wonder if that's a good idea. It's convenient because you don't have to sew an extra dart, but it causes all kinds of problems, and I wonder if there are fit problems too. But it is a way to compensate. Okay. So I think that if I line this up right here, modify, set, rotate. Right now I'm thinking out loud and making all kinds of lovely mistakes. So right here, where I was trying to put this dart in, I like putting the dart there, and you can actually see, because of the shape of the curve change, we had about, it was just less than a half of an inch of dart that I was putting there, and rotating it in and easing it is putting it there. But our shoulder still needs to be the same, and I don't like the way that joins. So I'm going to move that blend, and it's going to kind of be splitting the difference between putting the dart in the shoulder, and it will keep our angles turning out nicely without changing the fit. So I'm going to create line copy, and I'm going to copy, no, not piece. Okay, create line copy. I only want to copy this line. I have to select the control key, copying that line, and I'm releasing and putting it back down again. I want it to go on that piece, and I want to cancel and say okay. Alright, I realize that I just skipped a whole bunch of steps in my head, and I'm sorry if that lost you, but here we are back again. I copied this line onto this piece because that's where I need to blend this, because back when I was using this line to draw kind of a yoke line for the two pieces to go together so I didn't have to sew a dart, and I put that dart in the yoke. How much space did we have in that? This dart is 0.435. So I'm putting most of that dart in the seam allowance like a princess or a yoke. But it looks like that it's not going to, oh my goodness. Okay, right here. That is just so much easier. Okay. But it looks like that if I put all of it right there, it's going to give me a messy join, and I don't really like it. So I'm going to create a 2-point curve, and I'm just going to barely blend this back into this and put that right there. And if we're curious of that 0.43, whatever it was, how much of it am I putting back? Verify line length, 0.159. So I've got 3/8 of it in a dart, and it matches, so I'm not really easing it. And I'm going to call that good. So I'm going to split this, modify line split right there, and then I'm going to modify line swap. I'm going to try doing it with just that one and this one, and it worked. So I'm going to keep that, and that solves my problem in a couple of different directions, and I don't have to go crazy. So delete line. I don't need this one anymore or that one, and if that didn't make sense, just back up and re-watch it. But I want to combine those two lines. Modify line, combine, control this line. Oh, there's an extra line under there. So combine this one and this one. And I could combine that one, but I'm not sure I'm ready. And I also want to edit that point and that one. I don't want to delete the whole point, but I do want to delete the grade aspect. And I clearly have a little dotted line under there I want to get rid of. Okay. So now all those pieces fit together, and I get my dart back because the shape of the curve is different, and I need to ease that in. And if I really wanted to, I think that's actually fairly okay, but if I really wanted to, depending on how yours turned out, you could blend this line to that one, but that is just such a small amount. I don't think I would do that. So I'm going to undo. So that leaves me with these two are lining pieces and these two are facing pieces. These are both velvet. And that's going to be more comfortable on your back neck than wool or lining anyway. And you'll put that tuck in. So you'll sew the lining together first on both sides and the tuck, and you'll sew the velvet together on both sides, and then you can either start from the center back on both sides and sew all the way around, or you can start from one side and sew to the other, but you have to be extra careful while you're matching up. And the notches I put there already match. Okay, that's the simple version. But I wouldn't leave this way if I were putting this in production. I would take at least some of this dart out of here as part of a princess line here on the lining. So if I modify line move, this one, and I hold down the control key and I select all of these, and I bring it over and I put it right there next to where it belongs. And then I come up to line rotate and I select down the hold key. And I rotate and release and then touch a point to rotate from. Uh-oh. I chose the one to rotate around and that would have been a mess. Modify line rotate. Hold down the control key. Choose all the lines. Now, I don't know exactly what I'm going to do. The point to rotate around is this one, and a point to guide the movement, I'm going to use that one. If I bring that over there and I leave this amount in as ease, and I should have rotated that a little further. So I need to zoom in tighter next time. But it looks like I maybe need to move them all over. Or I can just move that part of the line over. So modify, rotate, control. I'm just going to choose these three. Release, rotate around this one, point to guide the movement, and if I zoom in right there, I can set it down right on top. Okay, so this is the lining. I've left some ease in there. You always want to leave some ease, but instead of trying to sew that dart, I'm actually going to swap. I'm going to extend that line, modify line adjust, because it's not quite overlapping. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other one just in case. Oh. Alright, and then I'm going to split and swap so that this is a princess line sewing into that one, and my lining is a better fit. Without that, I don't have to do that. I could leave my dart there. I could leave extra ease in it. But I want a nice, neat princess line right there, and I kind of want to put a pocket in that area. So you could be creative and have fun with a pocket inside your lining. But modify line split. Right here and right here, and swap, control, clockwise, control, so I'd need to blend that so that it was curved nicer, and looking at it, you know, I question whether it's a good idea or not. If I was making this into a, that is an option, but I wouldn't let it be that clunky. And you now would have to put your darts in, your notches in. I don't know why I always say notch, dart, when I mean notch. Create 2-point curve. This is the kind of crazy, silly stuff that you sometimes do when you're making it easier for the sewers. So that line would work. But this one is questionable. So I would swap that, and then I would sew those two together, and that would be pulled out of the lining, but I would still have this much of the dart that's converted to ease. And maybe I want to put more or less in it, but that's one way. So if I actually were sewing these two together, and that dart disappeared in there, and I wanted to put a pocket in here, could even really mess with it and close that dart and leave a little bit of ease in it and not have to sew that dart either, because I could. But it depends on where you're working and the price point and the fit and all of that. So you don't have to do that. Just leave your dart where it was and show it to me without converting it into the princess facing seam. But you could close that and get all of your darts gone so that this cuts all the way over to here. You could just close that dart and spread it open and have a little bit more ease there. But if you put a pocket opening right here, well, you don't want to put it where it's going to show from the outside. But pick a place and put in a pocket lining. And I guess you could just put it right here. So if I wanted a pocket bag right here, I want it to hang straight down with gravity. So the back side of your pocket bag is going to hang down here. And you'd want to do horizontal lines and connect them. And the front side of your pocket bag is going to be that much shorter. Then you could sew the two sides together and make a nice welt patch pocket, or whatever you decide to do with your design. But you would trace off the two pocket pieces separately and your welt separately. And I can hear you getting bored. I never saved the original of that piece. How sad is that? Should I undo all the way back? I could. Let's try. Okay. So I'm going to save it in that position, and then I'm going to wish that I could undo all the way back and have the other piece. But this is what I'm expecting for your homework. So, piece to menu. Piece to menu. And this one I need to save. And I've got that one and I haven't changed it. Did I want to save that piece? I guess so. So I don't need the extra lines on this piece. Some of this, if you would like my help with, if you get confused, save it with the lines on it. You can always delete them later. What does that one come back down looking like? So I haven't swapped that line on the armhole on that piece, and they're all over the place, so I'm going to use this separate the pieces and put them in a row. None of those have changed. I could save that if I want to ask teacher questions because that was my thought process. This is my jacket back adjusted now, except I didn't save it with that grade rule gone and my nicer armpit, so I kind of like that one better. I'm going to save it this way. And then I can delete those extra lines. And I didn't ever save over that. So when you're all finished with this, you've got your map. And the real back neck facing, if you would save them so that they're easier to see and understand, those go together. Oh, well, look at that. I saved it that way even though the green line is crooked. So I'm going to put it right here to take my picture with it just like this. And I'm going to use my actual front that I'm going to sew. And you could line it up so that they're all on top of each other. And then my actual back piece I would want to put with those, and then take a screenshot of that right there. And that's what I want, well, eventually when we're all finished with this. But better yet, just call me over and have me look at it with you, and I'll write your points down after we've corrected it together. But that's your lining and facings, and I'll put the sleeve all together at once.